Hello, everybody. It's me, Pacific. Hey, anybody want to play some golf? I'm terrible at this game. I don't even know how to swing and hold one of these things appropriately. All I remember as a kid, it was fun hitting stuff with these. Oh, yeah. Anything with a stick, you know? Or a pipe, or a bat. Forget baseball. I used a baseball bat to hit things. Oh my gosh. So one of my girls comes up to me on my bus today, black girl, with her hair all sticking out the sides, and bus driver, you know what I want to be for Halloween? Now y'all know I don't do Halloween and I hate it. But, you know, these kids, this is the world there. And I said, what's that? One girl said, I'm going to be a spider lady. One guy said he's going to be a white knight. She said, I'm going to be a zombie that partied all night. I just laughed. A zombie that partied all night. This is the world we're living in, man. So, I was thinking about stuff to do a video on. Viewers, I want to continue to vent my spleen on my childhood. I think that it's important that we all do that and not live as victims, not grovel around in it and, you know, the very thing I complain about American women have a bad experience with a man and they go on bitching about it for 30 years. Well, I'm kind of doing the same thing. But I never realized how much impact parents have on the molding of their child. It is huge. I was talking to my uncle the other day. He's in his 70s. His father was an alcoholic. His father never said, I'm sorry. My uncle confessed to me that to this day, every so often that hurt and that anger comes up, and his father's dead and gone. He said, Pacific, it never leaves you. Never. He knew some of the dynamics that went on in my house. And he said, boy, I had no idea all that was going on in there until he's now divorced, but it would have been my aunt. He came home and told her, you have no idea what that woman's doing to those children over there, meaning me and my sister. I don't want to pull out every little single thing that happened, but what I want to tell you is I want to set the stage of how I grew up with two parents who were so disconnected from mentoring, molding, educating, and setting me on a course that was productive and good. I've kind of doped along, and to give you an idea, 6th grade, Mammoth Elementary School, Mammoth Lakes, California, the teacher came up to all of us kids and says, I want everybody to write a will for the 6th grade annual, the yearbook. I had no idea what a will was. You know, a will. I, Scott Lawrenson, will my great intellectual ability to Keith Larson, who's a complete, inept dum-dum. That kind of stuff, you know. In my 6th grade yearbook is printed this. I will give a piece of my red hair and one of my dirty socks. Period. That's it. The teacher didn't correct that and say, whoa, 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 let's explain this. I didn't know at 6th grade what a will was. I didn't know a lot of things. I was told by my mother that I was behind my grade. Well, duh. We are products of our environment. My dad didn't have much discussion with me. My dad was into country music, pretty quiet. He watched football, watched sports. But I thought I would elaborate. I spent a lot of time in my aunt and uncle's house. That would be the brother on the side of my dad's family. This is all the adopted family. Spent a lot of time in my aunt and uncle's house, the aunt being on my mother's sister, and grandma and grandpa's of both sides. And the people that I gained the most from, that I still hold to this day, are my grandma and grandpa on my mother's side, believe it or not. My grandma would give me stacks of National Geographics. I'd get up so early in the morning and she'd come out and don't wake anybody up and give me a stack of National Geographics. Now, come on, man. You're a 5-year-old kid and you're going to plop down National Geographics. But you know what? I didn't read any of them, but I looked at those pictures and I'd read the caption at the bottom. Timbuktu and the Philippines. And as a kid, I was like, man, this is so different than our world. But that gave me a lust for the world at large. Travel, seeing places, exotic people. My grandpa was in the Merchant Marine, so he sailed the 7 seas. And you know what? My grandpa and I were not warm fuzzy. He always said, Michael Mass, you're a character. His daughter, my mother, had colored such a picture that I was this monstrous imp to deal with that he had no tolerance for that. Yet, I respected him because he sailed the world and he would tell stories about his seafaring adventures, and those stuck with me. My cousin, who's my mother's sister's son, said, it's amazing. You have more in common with Papa than anybody else in the family, and you're not even blood. But let's go to my dad's brother. He was a banker, vice president of the Savings and Loans Division of Bank of America out in California. He did very well, made a very handsome income. And his wife was from Iowa. She had long, beautiful, sandy blonde hair, very pretty, petite gal. And I was shocked and horrified in the 70s when we came out to visit, and she had chopped off her hair, literally dyke short. And as a kid, I'm like, what happened to your beautiful hair? I never understood why she did it, and she's kept it that way ever since. It looks horrible. It's never looked good. Loud, louder than me. And she would let her kids watch anything, play video games to the point of obsession. And my cousin, who's a few years younger than me, he was more book smart. But Dad liked his daughter more and favored his daughter more because his daughter was in sports, and Uncle would lay down on his big belly in front of the TV and watch sports. And it's so funny that when I was married to my wife for 14 years, went out to California to visit my then cousin who was married to a Filipina. He divorced her and married another Filipina who just looked like her, and now I don't think he's even involved with her. Last time I checked his Facebook, he had 2 bleach blonde white girls all over it, and I was like, what happened? He graduated with honors and summa cum laude and all that out of a university out of California, did very well, and yet he doesn't have common sense 101. But I'll never forget something he said to his mother, my aunt, right in front of us. Oh yeah, well, Dad wasn't in the picture. He favored my sister, and he was angry. I don't want to get too personal here. My oldest sister, which was the parents that adopted me, their natural born, she was always deceitful, always untrustworthy. As kids, she would get my sister and I together when my folks were gone and say, Mom's not being very nice to you, is she? And draw us out. And I was stupid and naive, and I'd start belching everything out. As soon as Mom came home, man, she did that when I was an adult. She started a big conversation when I was married to my wife 14 years. We came out to California to see the relatives. We were staying at my grandma's house. My sister and her family came up. These were good Mormons, mind you. And she started telling us stories that Mother put a catch on her door, a lock, or, shut her bedroom door with a catch on it. I said, I thought she only did that to me. Oh, no, she did that. She confessed all this stuff. And she had initiated this whole discussion. Well, when this all came out, she denied every bit of it to my mother, and I was the one that had the discussion. And she said, oh, I actually was trying to calm him down because he was throwing his weight around. My even then wife at the time said, he was not. And he said, wow, your family really is messed up. Interestingly enough, my ex-wife is and my mother are both secretly having discussion behind my back and all. It's sickening. My little sister, who I thought I was close to, has always been afraid to take the stand she's needed to take with her mother and has never stood and defended me. And I had told you about just story after story, viewer, of things that went on. And I look back at the women in my family, every one of them were jacked up. Every single one of them. My grandmother, on my mother's side, she collected things, but she did not deal with conflict. Her way of dealing with conflict is pretend it isn't there. Her husband was a drunk, was out in the garage drinking, had stacks of porn all over the den. I remember when I was an adult and I wrote all that to my mother when I finally did a tell-all 30-page letter to my mother saying, I have been condemned all my life. Let me tell you what I remember about all the events, and let me tell you about a few things. You idolize your father. Well, let me tell you the effect he's had on me. Her comment about me finding the porn, me, my cousin, and my sister, well, you weren't supposed to be getting into that stuff. Good answer. It was right there. It wasn't behind locked doors. It was in the den. We always used to play in that den, and there they were for all to see. I watched this family of mine defend people that were indefensible and vilify people where no vilification was due. I told you that I was blamed for being too hyper. My mother put me on Ritalin. That didn't work. She believed in the myth that maybe caffeine would have the opposite effect and calm me, so I was drinking cup after cup of coffee as a kid. That didn't work. I couldn't get to sleep at night. My mother never could accept the fact I had a huge nuclear reactor inside of myself called energy. Let me tell you something, viewers, and my workplace. A lady came up to me the other day that knew me from the 90s when I worked at the same school district driving a bus. She's still there. Very nice woman. She's from Montana. Montana are some of the best people I know, by the way. She said, you need to get another job, Pacific. I said, why is that? She goes, you got too much energy for this place. You run circles around these people. You are bright. You are alert. She goes, these people working here are losers. This is a woman who does not fraternize with the people in the break room. She doesn't hang out. She works. She doesn't cheat on her husband. She doesn't dress inappropriately. She doesn't flirt or lead on. And she's got long black hair. And she's a hardworking, slender gal. And in a Montana, Wyoming sort of way, she's a lady. And because of the life that we live, she has to work. Her husband works too, though. They're not Christians, but they're good people. I grew up, little by little, the erosion set in that nobody in this so-called family has my back. Nobody. And that is a very sobering thing, viewers. I don't say this to elicit your sympathy or to cry me a river. But a viewer wrote me today and said, you know, we both have been through similar pasts. And when you don't have a family of love and you're not taught about relationships and all that, it's like throwing somebody in the water but never teaching them how to swim, not even giving them a life vest or a life raft or a buoy to grab onto. I'm paraphrasing. And I read what she said, and it was full of profound wisdom, and I said, you need to make a YouTube video on this alone. This was a white woman. I need to say that because I say a lot of things about white women, but this is a white woman who's raising her children, who loves her husband, who's a Christian, who actually tries to live what she believes. She said she's watched my videos because she said our paths are very similar. That people that are abused like us usually get into super addictions of drug abuse, drinking, violence. You know, I don't want to tell you everything I've done, but there have been some times in my life where I got very mad. And I didn't torture people. But let's just say that when I went through a phase in my life, I got very mad and I tortured some squirrels pretty good. I don't do that anymore because I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's God's creation. I do trap them and drown them. but I don't mess with them. Just do them in, get it over with. But you know, y'all wonder about my thing with pets. I watched my mother defend pets, tearing up the furniture, pooping and peeing everywhere, crapping all over the car seat that I had to sit in, but then getting the snot pounded out of us. My mother came into my room 2 times. I don't know if I said this on a video. When I was a child living in Torrance, California, 2814 Delmead Street. Gosh, I still remember the address. Went to Walteria Elementary. I don't even know what I had done. It was very little. My mother came into my room in a total rage and took everything, like say this is the dresser and the shelf, dashed everything to the floor, pulled all the drawers out, threw the drawers down, dumped the contents out, took all the seashells, everything off the shelf, and threw everything on the floor, smashed it, jumped on it, threw it around, and went crazy. And then after that tirade of yelling and screaming and smashing everything, demanded I clean it up. She came into my room 2 times and did that. Another time when I was a boisterous boy, the neighbor and I were up on the clubhouse roof in the backyard, and we took a couple candles with a glass vase around them and tossed them off the thing, and they broke. My mother's response to that, instead of just giving me a prompt butt whipping, which would have been in order, took 2 of my favorite Tonka trucks and proceeded to smash them to oblivion with a hammer in front of me. I remember I had a problem of chewing my shirt. I've seen kids do that. I've seen kids get on and they're chewing there's the little cord that comes out of the thing, or chewing on the edge of their mitten. I figure some of that's just whatever. My mother chopped up a shirt, put parsley flakes on it, put it at the dinner table, sat me down and demanded and screamed at me to eat it. And I said, "What are you, nuts?" And even my own dad said, "Come on." I didn't eat it. My mother was immature herself. To this day, she's still not well. She will never be well. Chronic smoker, chronic denialist. Everything is everybody else's fault, never hers. And I look at all the women in my family. None of them can be trusted at all. It's funny. The last good conversation I had with a female family member of mine was my aunt, when I picked her up in Spokane to bring her up to see her son's new baby. She was on her medications. She was also bipolar, but she was in her right mind, and I took her to Red Lobster. We talked. We talked all the way. She was sharp as a tack. She goes, "Pacific, I know what you grew up with at home." And it was awful. She had a lot to say. She was always loving to me. She was always kind to me. She had her own problems. Her own son went through his own baloney with her as well. But she saw what went on. And what's really sad is the aunt on my dad's side of the family, my dad's sister, she became bipolar, but she was married to a very successful man who was principal of a school and making very good money. They lived in Fullerton, California, which in the 70s, Fullerton was the up-and-coming hot neighborhood to be in. And for all my life, all she did was blast Uncle. Blast him, blast him, blast him. And I remember thinking, gosh, that guy seemed pretty nice to me. Her own daughter is, her birthday's 4 days away from mine, so we both share a March birthday. She is as narcissistic and self-serving and self-centered as ever. She worked at Nordstrom's or Macy's or one of those stores. And it was just me, 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 and it is to this day. Same thing. She married a guy, went and blabbed to everybody how terrible this guy was, and I don't know. I met the guy. I don't know. I never spent enough time with him, but I can honestly say that the women on my family side never would have given me every reason to hate women. And the reason I'm saying this, ladies, is because you having one bad experience with a man does not justify your rage and anti-male campaigns. It just doesn't. I grew up with a family of stupid, inept women that were rude, that wore the pants, that tore men down. I grew up in a family where the men all were the breadwinners, all of them, and they were torn apart, bitched at, and put down at every turn. And I know some of the men in our family had their problems. I'm not denying that. But those men provided a pretty comfortable living for all of these women. My mother, my grandma, my grandpa. Though I will say I never heard my grandma on my mother's side, my mother's mother, I never heard her put down him to anybody. I can't say I ever heard that. But my dad's mother, she blasted her husband all the time. He made good money, built a house that when she died was worth $300,000, and they paid $6,000 for it, the land, and the construction cost in 1942. Pretty good return on one's investment, eh? We talk about trust. I didn't know what was what. When I started finding that I was feeling something between my legs, an erection, and then climbing the poles at school, and what was that tingling feeling? Then resorting to playing with yourself and getting that orgasm. I didn't know what any of that was, and I finally, out of complete confusion, called my mother one night. This was my mother living in the condo across town. I was home alone in this big 2-story, 4-bedroom house. It was a ski house. It was built by a bunch of people from Southern California just as a place to crash on the weekends. The place was freezing cold with single pane, big giant windows that looked at the mountains and everything. The house was a sieve for heat. We had an old stone fireplace that the heat went straight up the flue. We had a Ben Franklin stove. It was hot down there by the stove, hot by the fireplace. The bedrooms were cold. We couldn't turn on the electric heaters because he was afraid the electric heaters would short out and cause a fire. I remember the temperature in my bedroom was 32 degrees one day. I did have sufficient blankets, so I'm not complaining about that. They did what they had to do to afford it. But what bothers me is growing up in that household and seeing the things that I saw. To this day, astound me. It took me 20 years to finally articulate something ain't right. Something's wrong. I grew up with so much fear and always trying to seek people's approval that to this day, that when somebody disapproves of me or gives me dirty looks, I'm very sensitive to that. Very sensitive to that. But from that house, I called my mother at the condo. Said, I'm doing something to myself and I don't understand, and I described it. She laughed nervously. Well, you'll have to talk to your father about that. I'm like, okay. I went to my father, and his words were this. This was my sex education. You'll be doing that till you're 80 years old. Oh, that's it. Wasn't told about the penis, the orgasm, the sperm, and men and women. Nothing. Never had a talk about sex. Never had a talk about anything. There are things I'm not going to mention in this video that I grew up. Some things I did that I'm not proud of because I didn't know. Some things I did that I confessed to counselors. I was sent to a weird counselor in Mammoth who was New Age freako. Told her about some of the things I was doing, and at the time she said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I know now there was definitely something wrong with that, and she should have said, hey, you need to stop that. I didn't understand a dang thing. I grew up not knowing a lot of anything. I was laughed at and teased all through school. I was made fun of for my thick glasses. I was called Carrot Top, and I was so slow on getting it. The kids all made fun of me, and I didn't have a lot of friends. In fact, I had none for the longest time. I was not chosen for teams in PE. I was laughed at all the time. I was made fun of in class. I was chased home from school, beat up. It was amazing. And I was taught all my life that all of that was my fault. You're a squirrel, you're hyper, you're this. And some of it was, some of it wasn't. One kid was harassing me. I went to my dad and said, I'm having a problem. Well, you know the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I'm not a fighter. My dad wouldn't defend me. Nobody would. I have a strong sense of injustice. That's why people doing stuff in traffic really rattles me. And the more and more that I'm coming to grips with things, it's like I start saying, Lord, is there any way I could kind of get out of that? Because I do have problems, viewers. I do. I'm very sensitive about things. I take things very personally. I take rejection very hard. My older sister is deceitful, a liar, never loved me, never bonded with her, never trusted her at all. There's not one woman in my family that I can say had their crap together as far as uh, moral compass, as far as good direction. My sister and I came home from school, let ourselves in the house, watched TV. When we were little, we had mom at home, but that was just sheer terror. My mother got mad at me. She'd make me crouch under the furniture or make me crouch in the bathtub until the washing machine outside would back up into the drain. I'd start yelling because I wasn't allowed to leave the tub, and then she'd get mad and throw me in the linen closet when it was 100 degrees in LA and it's hot and stuffy. And even my oldest sister said, I remember this to this day, Mom, you can't leave him in there. He'll suffocate. She started yelling at her. My mother would mock. She would make fun of us as she was disciplining us, and not even disciplining, but abuse. And I look at today, I really have a hard time with mean, ugly, nasty women. I have a real hard time when somebody's nasty and mean to me when I'm just nice, when I'm just at work and they won't even say hi. And I take that stuff so personally, and I've tried so hard to work through that. The viewer that wrote me the message that read tonight, it was very profound. She said, we're living in a dog-eat-dog world, and you and I are not like that. And that's it right there. In spite of all the crap that I've been through, I have a heart. I want to do good. I want to do right. And it's depressing out there. And there's some people that grew up with flesh and blood families that have done this crap to them. What bothers me is I learned the lesson very, very early in my family, especially with my oldest sister, who was the natural born of the parents that adopted me. Blood is thicker than water. She was the favored one, all the way through, still is. The thing that bothers me is I go through life without all the tools. You see all this? This is a room full of just about every tool you need. I didn't get all those growing up. I still make mistakes. There are a lot of people that grew up in loving, good families, and they let some of the stuff that bothers me roll off their back like duck water. And I envy them. I've said over and over and over, the children who were loved and appropriately touched by their father and mother and in a nurturing, sweet environment, they weren't out there having sex and getting knocked up. I pursued women. Some man touched me in a park. I thought it was weird, but it felt good. And I thought, man, am I gay? And it took me a long time to realize, no, I'm not gay. I don't look at a guy and go, no. The desperate need to be affirmed, valued. And by the way, that man who touched me in that park's going to stand before God for that. We live in a messed up world. Predators. They stalk playgrounds. They look for that kid standing alone. They're dangerous people. Dangerous. I made 3 marital decisions, one of which was not entirely my fault. That was coerced by the woman I married, the first wife. The father, he was a nut job of the highest order. A born-again Christian, but way off the beam. That'll be a video someday. Just that crazy man and his crazy daughter. That marriage lasted a year and a half. I never made wise relational choices. Ever. And I looked for sex. And I will tell you something, viewers, I'll be very frank with you. I love the beauty of a woman. I love a woman's breasts up against me, her nipples, kissing her. I love all that. I love intimacy, sensual intimacy with a woman. But I also like to connect here, and heart to heart and soul. And as I comment on these things going on in our culture, in spite of my deficits, I do have discernment. In spite of my naivety and my stupidity, God has given me eyes and I see what's going on. I'm a broken mess who's 47 years old and I'm making it, and I'm driving a dang bus in charge of students. Now, with all that I grew up with, I should be on meds or should have committed suicide. And trust me, when I was a teenager, I wanted to kill myself. My mother was nuts. One of these days, I'll take the time to tell you about all the different crazy things she did, but maybe not. What's the point of going over all that, dredging it up? My mother would pit us against each other. When she was mad at my sister, she'd come and curry favor with me, and vice versa. And same thing with the family. Her own sister, who she was friends with, they both got into pottery together. They both got into arts and crafts together. We even moved to Mammoth because she was already there. And my mom backbit her and backstabbed her and turned on her. And then she used us kids to side with her. Horrible stuff. My aunt had a shoe store. She started the one and only shoe store in Mammoth Lakes. My sister and I'd get out of school and walk by that. It's called the Complete Foot. We'd walk by that shoe store. Say, "Hi, Auntie." She was always happy to see us. One day we come home and Mom tells us, "Don't tell Angie this, but I work for another shoe store to open up, my friend." I'm like, "Huh?" She told us not to go by the shoe store. We didn't. 2 days of that went by. I don't know how my aunt found out about her working for the competition, but we lived in a town of 2,500, so I imagine that the gossip went through the town so fast. That was the first time I saw my aunt get very angry. Heard a knock at the door. I opened the door. "Hello, Pacific." "Hi, Auntie." "You might want to stay downstairs. Is your mom home?" "She's upstairs." She stormed up the stairs. I went and got my sister, my little sister. We stood at the end of the hall downstairs. And I'll never forget my aunt yelling, "What the F are you doing to those children?" She yelled, "I know about the shoe store thing, and they haven't come by in 2 days, and you're working for the competition," and she went off. I looked at my sister and said, "Mom blew it." Mom come down after that. "Did you see her? Did you?" I'm like, I'm not even allowed to form an opinion. I gotta shut up or I'm gonna be in deep trouble. The dynamics in my family were screwed up to the highest order. There was no unity, there was no love. It was flavor of the month. People ganging up. Everybody's out for themselves. And the sad thing is, there's nothing I can do about that. I just get up each day and go to work. I'm watching our world deteriorate every day. In the break room that I'm at, I'm watching some 20-year-olds who get hired. They are selfish. They have no manners. They do not say hello. They come to work, but they've got an edge to them. And I think, gosh, when I was in my 20s, were we like that? No, we weren't. It has changed. We're not in Kansas anymore. I'm still sensitive. I still take rejection very, very hard. And the sad thing is, I don't think I'll ever get over that. The good thing is, viewers, is that this YouTube forum is a way to vent my spleen. It has given me confidence. You know, politicians always hope that nobody finds the skeletons in their closet. The Pacific has been rattling his bones all over YouTube. And you know why I do it? Because I want to be real. Let me tell you something. Pacific is never going to be president. Pacific's never going to be famous. That's fine. I don't want the media up my butt. I don't want the media blasting me all over the globe in a negative way. What I want to do is be used to make a difference for the better. Sadly, I'm only meeting people through Cyberland. But nonetheless, there are people on the other end of that internet connection that hurt. Men and women that are listening to what I have to say, connecting with it, and getting something out of it. I thank God for that. I'm touched by that. There's beautiful white women listening to me, Asian women, African American women. There's men, white men, black men, Asian men. And you know what? In spite of all the crap that I've been through, one thing has happened that's been a blessing. I'm not racist. I'm not mainstream. But I'm not a good old boys club. And I'm not an exclusive white club only. My channel attracts all kinds of people globally. People have to have a business to do that. This isn't a business. People are tuning in from around the globe and listening to what I have to say. There's a woman teaching English in China who's watching me. She's from the UK. There's a woman raising her kids in Philadelphia listening to what I have to say. There's a woman in Tennessee watching what I have to say. There's a man in Louisiana watching what I have to say who's also making videos, and very good ones at that. There's a man in New York City going for criminal justice who's listening to what I have to say, who deeply respects me, and I respect him. And I could go on and on and on. There's a Walmart greeter who works a job that some people would make fun of, who watches my videos. There are people who are unemployed and feel rejected and abandoned by women and their family watching me. There's a woman who asked me to make a video about suicide that I still haven't heard from. I hope she's still there. Suddenly this takes on a whole new seriousness, that this isn't just fun and games. Most people go to YouTube to laugh their butts off at Sick and Crude and the latest diva. Not many want to tune into Pacific's rant, but I'm glad you do, because this is where we keep it real. This isn't some whitewashed, varnished, polished up thing. This is just a real person doing real time, telling people the truth. I appreciate my viewers, and I'm sorry if I don't always get back to you all. It's tough. There's a lot of people writing, and I try to drop a note here and there. Sometimes I answer things just in a video form. I could disable comments for every video, but I don't want to do that. I want discussion. I want people to interact with each other. I want my viewers to encourage each other. I want some of you guys to read some of the comments by those that are depressed, and if you've got something to give them, and not some pat spiritual platitude, because I'm sick of that, do it. If there's one thing I want Pacific to be known for, it'd be nice to galvanize us all to actually do something and make a difference in this crazy, corrupt world. But I'm thankful for the viewers I have. I wish I had you all face to face in our own community. It'd be interesting to see what that would look like. I don't have community here. The people that allow me to stay here, that I do work for, they have their own lives and they're good people. And I feel safe here. I've had an invitation to move to Vermont. It has actually rolled around in my mind. The fears that I have is New England's known for being somewhat provincial. And if you're not born and raised there, you're kind of an outsider. So I don't know if I'd fit in a small town in Vermont. Everybody says you ought to go to Asia. Folks, that takes money. You don't just get over there and go and say, okay, God, I'm here, make it happen. Some of you viewers have told me, well, you can go teach English. You cannot teach English without a degree in China, as best as I know. I cannot just go over there and do conversational English and get visa. It doesn't work that way. You're talking 4 years of degrees and all that. China doesn't just let you in. You have to have a degree, you got to be hired, and you got to be visaed. You know, there are people that do it illegally. They go over there on a tourist visa and get paid under the table. You get caught for doing that, and you can get in big trouble. I'm not going to do it. If God wants me in China, He'll open those doors, or else. For now, I drive a bus, and I put up with what I put up with. People say, if you don't like it here, leave the country. It's not that easy. God has me here for now. But back to trust, I still try to trust people. But yeah, I'd have every reason to hate women, but I don't. I don't. But I watch women every day, and it's disgusting what I'm seeing. The good news is I'm meeting some women on the internet that seem to have their stuff together. And the fact they're watching my videos tells me these women must have some substance to them if they're sitting there tuning into me, because most women would hear what I have to say and say, who's this frickin' fool? Turn that crap off. You know, I'm being nice. They'd say it in other words. I know who I am and I know who I'm not. For you women that watch me, thank you. You guys have been a big encouragement. So have you men. I'm glad there's men out here that admit they struggle with porn and masturbation. It's okay. But let's try to get out of that. My family was a mess. It still is. And I will never solve that problem. I will never have the love that I wanted from a mother and father. I never had a mom and dad that I could go to and just cry and say, man, I can't handle this. I did not learn how to ride a bike by them. I did not learn how to swim by them. Oh, they gave me swimming lessons, and my mother tried to yell and scream at me how to ride a bike, but it was so scary. I learned to swim by people who were loving and kind and encouraged me. I was scared, partly because I almost drowned a few times, and I was hanging on to the coping at a pool at the deep end, and my mother yelled, well, swim over to your dad, he'll catch you. I didn't trust him, and I didn't, and I was berated and made fun of as a little tyke for that. I didn't have the kind of a relationship with my dad where I knew he'd catch me. It's kind of like when you drive and then you ride with somebody else and you're pushing that brake pedal and clutching the dash going, could you pull over, please? You're making me nervous. There's very few people I can ride with that I feel safe. A lot of people that I ride with, they're tailgating. I'm like, I want to say, will you back off? And I'm shutting my mouth because I'm in their car. And it's like, oh man, this is uncomfortable being in here. And it's not about a control thing for me. It's It's about trust. I like it when my students for field trips get off the bus and say, you know, you're a good driver. You don't hit all the bumps and you don't hit the curves when you go around the corners, and, you know, you're good. That viewer in Philadelphia, thank you for your comments. I do want to please, but now I'm learning please in the right way. My cousin said something regarding my mother a few years ago that I have had to tell myself over and over. Pacific, you need to stop making yourself vulnerable to wolves. You know, when a dog submits, it rolls over on its belly and lets its master scratch it. I have rolled over on my belly for the wrong people and had my stomach and my guts gouged out. Yes, it's a metaphor. I've always been vulnerable. I've always offered up, honestly, to people my whole business and past. I did it with that church secretary that was interested in me. Big mistake. In American culture, you don't go up and be transparent to just anybody because they will roast you with it and use it against you. Because they themselves are not real, and they're hiding behind all kinds of false fronts, pretenses, and insecurity, the very thing that Jesus Christ came to tear down. If there's one thing I get out of Scripture, and one thing I get out of the New Testament and the Old, is that God is after the heart, and too many people are playing religion and playing a game. My parents, being chief religionists, hiding behind the Catholic Church, and our whole family was religious, United Methodists, and they go to church and they sing in the choir, and they're some of the crappiest people I know. Church and religion don't do anybody any good. A relationship with God where you truly get in tune with knowing who He is and knowing who you are and admitting that you are far from where you should be, that's where things begin. I hate religion. I can't stand churchy people because they are the most destructive. Live in a neighborhood with people that go to church, in a middle-class neighborhood. They're materialistic, they're gossips, they look down their nose, just like the viewer who wrote me tonight said they are the most judgmental. Christians aren't perfect, we know that, but somebody who truly comes into contact with Christ learns to become genuine. There's a word, sincera, and that word is the word that sincere, we get the word sincere from, and it means without wax. When you went into the marketplace back in the New Testament times, somebody would drop a clay pot on the ground and it would crack. And a guy would melt wax and put it into the crack so you wouldn't see the crack. But a good buyer would hold that up to the light, and the light would shine through that paraffin or whatever, showing the cracks. When a business said, the pottery shop said sincera, that means without wax, meaning that these pieces were not broken, they were genuine, bona fide. More Christians today are not sincere. And that is bad. I learned to be real because my family isn't. They're pretenders and fakes. When everybody else was around, they put on the show. But I knew what I saw every day. That's why I can see through people. That's why when I see this woman all dressed up, I look at people in traffic putting on their eyeliner. Some woman was just dolling herself up at the traffic light. And I was just looking out the service door. Not once. And it was right there. You'd think all she'd have to do is turn. Oh my gosh. And I wasn't looking at her, checking her out. I'm like, man, she's just really doing it. There was nobody on my bus. I was driving back empty. Not once did she turn up and look at me at all. So focused on that. I look at the guys in the suits and ties. They're going to work. Hi, how you doing? And they talk in this contrived voice and everything is so professional. We don't let anybody in and don't let the cracks show. And then they get in their car. Oh, bloody well, better watch out, mate. Americans have been taught to play games. Americans have been taught to play the charade and to make it look good. Americans have not been taught to deal with their heart. Churches don't deal with the heart. Preachers don't deal with the heart. parents don't mold their kids' heart in the right direction. I'm still sensual. I still crave intimacy with a woman, and I will make no apologies for that. But I was never directed. Could I have been something more? I don't know. I don't know if God had a better plan for me. I will never know that until I get to heaven. I do know this based on the way I grew up. I was stunted. That I certainly didn't soar with eagle's wings. Most of my life I've been walking around with pigeons thinking that pigeon food looks pretty good. There were little things in my life. Going to Hong Kong for the first time, I felt like I'd mounted up with eagle's wings. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out here. And the more that I learned, the more stupid I began to realize I had been all my life. Viewers, I share this stuff with you not for you to feel sorry for me. That's not what this is about. But it's to connect with you and to tell you a little bit about myself. I don't go to counselors. I don't go to preachers. There's no point in talking about this. America's full of all these ideas and answers of what you ought to do, and I've tried some of that stuff and it doesn't work. No counselor can heal Pacific. And why should I pay somebody to give me information? Really? We can find information through the internet, we can find information through the Bible, and we can find information from good, solid people that we trust. Counseling is a cop-out. Now, I'm not saying it isn't needed, but for me, I found that it doesn't work. People want to psychoanalyze everything to death. We got a bunch of women today analyzing men, and he needs anger management, he needs this, he needs that. But I notice those same women don't seem to think they need a thing. Interesting. What we need is real people who love each other and work through the faults and say, yeah, you're a mess, but I love you anyway, and they put your arm around you. I don't know what it is, how America got to the point that we're looking for perfection, and all I see out there all day long is nothing but imperfection. The way people drive, the way people act, and then these women put these standards on guys, and men do it to women too. And you're like, are you serious? You're a complete jerk, and you're putting this high maintenance standard over somebody's head? Sheesh. It gives me confidence to vent this out. It gets rid of stress. It helps me to heal, to make videos, to go public. Some might say, well, gee, it'd be interesting to see what your parents had to say. Yes, it would be. I'd love to see them make a video. They won't do it. And I think enough people have seen my videos. If they did, they'd see right through it. I don't lie about these things. I was a difficult child to raise, but I was a child. And it's no excuse for the violence and the crazy stuff that went on in the house. Profanity, the put-downs, the garbage, the cattiness, punched, hit, kicked, everything. I mean, come on. At some point, you got to realize, even me, I get frustrated. You think I don't get frustrated? I got a kid getting out of his seatbelt, running around the bus. I have to stop, red light, pull the parking brake, get up, put the seatbelt on, up go his legs and everything. He's blocking. I have to physically grab his foot, put it down, and then put that thing on. It's like, man, thank God I don't have to deal with that all day long. Every day, 24/7. And my hat's off to parents that got difficult children. It's hard. I couldn't do it. But abuse? You adopted me. If you can't handle it, what are you doing adopting kids? And then have more pets? Our house was a household of chaos. There was no peace. There was no joy. There was no love. Those things were gone. You know, I'm thankful I have some viewers that care. Somebody else told me New Hampshire would be a good place. I'm going to do some looking and thinking. I guess if I could find a job in a small town, I'd give it a try. I have my doubts. I see the whole country's in a bad state of affairs. But who knows? Maybe there is a place for me after all. We'll see. This is Pacific, signing off. Oh, by the way, if any of you want to take me golfing, I'm going to have to decline. I still don't know how to hit a ball with one of these. Bye-bye.